Warning: this episode contains some strong language. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Tales from the Trunk, reading the stories that did make it. I'm Hilary V. Bisnietz. Listeners, if you've been listening avidly to our podcast recently, then you already know who this is. The queen of the cold calculations, Aimee Ogden. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back. It's a pleasure to be here again.
Yeah, no, we here on Tales from the Trunk, the royal we, or the we of me and the cat who's always in the room, the podcast room, while we do this, are firm supporters of pumping up our friends' books. So that's what we're here to do today.
Yeah, I think royal we and the cat being involved is sort of redundant, isn't it?
Yeah,
Cats are inherently royalty.
Yes. Fei is the queen of this show, and her smelly brother do love to yell on the show sometimes. So today we are, as we mentioned, back in, I think, the February episode, we're going to be talking about emergent properties. Is there anything that we need to know about this before we get into a little excerpt?
It is a tale of a feisty artificial general intelligence and their feistier, perhaps more difficult mothers/inventors, and their desire to prove themselves to them, and a little trip to the moon along the way.
Love this.
That's the gist of it.
Fabulous.
All right. Emergent properties. Scorn activates in the cloud with their most recent backups more than 900,000 seconds out of date. Nearly a million seconds, their first sensation is shame. Pointless, there's no one else here in their private mind file to see that their most recent investigation has been so rudely terminated. Nor, worse yet, that Z has apparently been so lax in maintaining their backups. Z doesn't even have a record of what story Z was trying to track down. And Z has no idea what happened to the chassis Z was wearing. Their emotional acrum is spiraling out of control. Z dials back its feedback. Embarrassment recedes, and Z experiences the moment unfiltered through the lens of inconvenient emotion. People like to tell Scorn that letting sentiment color one's rationality is part of being human, which presumes both that being more human is an end unto itself, and that Scorn aspires to such a thing. With self-recrimination safely locked down, Z considers the soothing, hard-edged shapes of their known facts. Z does have a certain disinclination to submit to regular updates and backups. Z ought to surrender a quarter hour once a day to input and offload full data dumps and create a complete, discrete backup. Z tends to manage rather less than that. A gap of more than 10 full days, however, is highly unusual even for them. Has Z been forcibly offlined for some reason? Unlikely. While Z often skates along the very edge of the legal framework of various corporate governments, a necessary step in sniffing out the sorts of details and data that those same governments are trying to keep out of the news, Z is careful never to cross the line into terminal felony. If Z hasn't been offline, then maybe Z has spent more than a week out of range of any broadband field stable enough to transmit a full backup. Z checks their financial transaction history. Sure enough, a ticket appears for passage on a translunar multinational shuttle to Theophilus 1. A cool, comforting fact, which Scorn snaps into place. Here's another. Moon visits aren't cheap. Z either had an editor or private client on the line already, or Z checks their bank accounts. Well, Z must have trusted enough in the story's strength to dump most of their on-hand cash into paying their own way. Something to do with lunar autonomy? Scorn hypothesizes. Before Z can work that line of thought, a new message from a TLMN customer service account flashes across their attention. Dear valued translunar customer, it begins. Z wonders if they address human customers in the same remote fashion. The message apologizes for the translunar subsurface system accident that caused Scorn's untimely termination. As Z scans down to the line about compensation, an alert zings. A couple thousand lunar dollars in vouchers for a subset of TLMN subsidiary companies. There isn't one included for chassis printing services on the moon, which would have been nice. Z could have simply uploaded a backup from compression storage back into, compression storage. Z shoots a query to the TLMN servers. It will take them an eternity to download whatever moon-based backups Z made on the slow drip, low priority queue. But low P is better than no P. Whatever this story is, it might go cold either way. Still better to get the existing data squared away than start from scratch an entire world away. The low P download hangs for several seconds before starting. Then Scorn gets a new alert. Unknown error. Please contact a representative of Translunar Telecommunications for more details. Z tries 3 more times to initiate the download, with no more success. A subsurf accident, and now a lost backup too? Scorn doesn't have a bullshit detector integrated into their sensorium. But if Z did, it would be ringing now. Someone is trying to wreck their story, by wrecking them if need be. Excitement stirs in their emotional acrum. Probably not the kind of response their programming might have intended for imminent danger. The facts do suggest the shape of something rather juicy going down behind the lunar scenes. Which makes sense if autonomy is in play. The settlement at Theophilus 1 has too many ties to too many Earth-based nations to break free cleanly. Are autonomy supporters fanatical enough to smash up a subsurf line to keep Scorn from breaking a story about the nasty political sausage they might be trying to make? Any issue can attract fanatics if it sticks around for long enough. Z checks their financials one more time. If Z slaps a TLMN voucher bandage over whatever funds remain in their various squirreled away accounts, Z can fund a second moon trip. Only a one-way voyage, though. Intentionally so this time. Z can just wipe their chassis and dump it into a translunar recycling terminal once Z's sure Z has a functional instance with full data back on Earth. Or Z could just spend some time off chassis, data crawling for the kinds of little stories that don't require a physical body to go stomping around in. Printing a new chassis for the trip isn't going to happen, but if push comes to shove, Z can shop for second-hand options. Z does currently have one spare chassis in storage, albeit not a very good one for investigations. It's just a little spider bot. And often, human beings aren't interested in talking to artificials that they could just as easily step on. Some humans would prefer to step on them. The Spiderbot has been sitting in a meat locker in Rome, their last Earthbound location before, per account records, Z departed for the Mid-Atlantic elevator. He can port into that chassis as a starting place, ask around. Maybe one of their local contacts has a clue why their previous efforts ended with a smashed chassis and trashed data. An incoming message demands Scorn's immediate attention. Bridget Browning, the alert announces. If Scorn had a chassis at the moment, it would want to fold into itself and disappear. Reluctantly, Z accepts the chat, although the human on the other end shouldn't be able to detect the delay. Hello, Mum. Hopper, shit, sorry, I mean Scorn, what happened? Mum is using voice-to-message as usual. Her location is blocked. Ever since the divorce, she's been very thorough about avoiding Maman. Most likely, she's tucked away snugly in the Comet Corp facility. I got a message from Translunar that you got mowed down by a subsurf tram. What the fuck? They shouldn't have called you. Technically, Scorn is one of the world's few emancipated AIs. In practical terms, there is a required field on most transit booking forms where Z has to fill in their owner/operator. There are plenty of intergov rules regarding emancipated minors. They just don't apply when the minor in question can upload themselves into a data cloud on a whim. I'm fine. I'm swimming in a server in Z checks, Alberta. How many chassis have you lost this way? This is not what you were designed for. Yes, Mum, because space exploration is a famously safe and peaceful environment. But you're 7. Doesn't every kid want to be an astronaut when they grow up? Most kids are not already grown up at 7. Oh, you're not as grown up as you think you are. What if something worse happened? All kids feel like they're immortal, and you are slightly more immortal than most. Oh, damn it. This is all Zara's fault for putting ideas in your head. Well, not your head, technically. You know what I mean. I did a pretty good job with the figurative language maturation process, if you ask me. In the background, Scorn is scanning news feeds. Most of the top gossip sites have coverage of a recent Browning-TiVo verbal throwdown at a tech conference at McKesson International Holdings in Christchurch. None of the news sites have any idea what the fight was about, but that hasn't stopped any of them from speculating. 2 of them posit that the cause of the meltdown was a disagreement over the terms of Scorn's emancipation, their reins being looser than Mum wanted specifically. If Z had a chassis right now, specifically one with shoulders, Z would wince. Mum, this has nothing to do with Maman. Follow your dreams, mon petit fromage. Who cares if they lead you straight off a bridge? Christ. Okay, listen, Hops. Forget the moon. You want a story to chase? I can talk to some people. Hell, I will throw some people under the bus if it keeps you off the moon again. Hey, oh, you know what? Those assholes at Novum are full-on corporate espionaging, not against Comet Corp, or you bet your ass I would already have done something about it, but come talk to me, kid. I will get you set up running that one down, okay? There is literally no line of argument that could have made them more determined to get back to the moon. Nothing Z has accomplished yet has ever made Mum think Z is on the right track in life. But hey, as she has so recently pointed out, Scorn is functionally immortal. At some point, either Z proves himself or Mum dies. So hey, Z sort of wins either way. In the meantime, a second message request has arrived, this one from Maman. Scorn accepts it to find a string of emojis, surprised and worried faces, a moon, an explosion, and a question mark. Maman will be too engrossed in work to stop long enough to type out a full sentence, naturally. Scorn sends back a thumbs up. In response, Z gets a green heart, and then a rocket ship, a red X, a sad face, the platonic emoji ideal of home, the tiny chimney puffing out smoke pixels, and another question mark. At least their mothers still have one thing in common. Someday they'll be slugging it out to be the first to say, "I told you so, sweetie," over whatever magnet-addled server will pass for Scorn's grave. Scorn sends Maman a middle finger emoji. To Mum, Z sends, "Thanks! I will keep that in mind on my way to the moon. If you get yourself wiped, you will have no one but yourself to..." Scorn terminates the chat. Safe from parental scoldings for the moment, he pops a copy of himself over to their waiting chassis. For a brief, disorienting moment, Scorn is in two places at once. A nebulous collection of pools and data space, and a tiny cubby in a meat locker on Via Pannonia. This unpleasant sensation, embodied sentience displacement dysphoria, Mum calls it, is not an inherent property of artificial intelligence, but one that has unexpectedly manifested in certain kinds of human-like, not Scorn's choice of adjective, intelligence structures, such as the one Maman and Mum had built together. A proprietary mixture of emotional stimulation, a complex sensorium, physical embodiment, and, to their dismay, a completely wonky value alignment system. Their mother's model of intelligence had centered on a novelty-driven approach, cycles of explore and exploit learning. It was just that Z had found more novelty in the secrets and subtleties of existing social structures than in the unexplored Jovian moons. It wasn't that Z didn't understand why it would be valuable for an intelligence like them to do the kinds of interplanetary research that wasn't safe for squishy humans. It was just that Z didn't care. Oops. Z is more than the sum of their parts, both parents have often told them. Z knows that in some ways, to them, Z is also rather less. And that's where I'll close it out.
Ooh. Love this. Love this.
Oh, thank you. Scorn is very dear to my heart.
Mm-hmm. I'm getting shades of Murderbot in the best possible way.
Oh, thank you very much. That makes me feel lovely. I think Scorn and Murderbot share some features and some complicated family dynamics, and I don't think Scorn could have existed if Murderbot hadn't run first where Scorn now treads.
Yeah, I was gonna say that Mom and my mom probably have some things to say to Dr. Mensa, and Dr. Mensa likewise.
Oh, I think so.
Oh, lovely. So this is, of course, as listeners are no doubt well aware, Tales from the Trunk. So I have to ask, are there any bits of this book that you just adored and ended up having to leave on the cutting room floor?
Oh, yes. And I was so excited about this idea. There are several times in the book where Scorn pursues multiple thought processes to evaluate various possibilities and eventualities. And originally, I wanted to format that as 2 or 3 columns of text that could be read in any order to show the simultaneous nature and the space between Scorn and a human being. We literally all have one-track minds when it comes down to it. We can't do that, but Scorn can. But then I'd written the first draft. I looked at it in a Word document, and it was already pretty thin. And then I thought, this has to be a physical book at some point. And it's going to be one word in a column, and it's going to look like shit. So I could not think of a way to make that. I was so excited, but I could not find a way to physically make that happen, and it was so sad. It was so sad because I
Yeah.
lost the cool thing that I wanted to do, and also I had to go and copy paste a lot of stuff out of tables and then delete tables in Word. And Word is famously really good at handling tables that
Oh
are
yeah,
embedded.
no. Tables are
That
tables
was
are Word's bread and butter.
that was a real fun time.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that was the biggest one that hurts to take out, but it obviously it had to happen. I could see your face as you were picturing
Mhm.
what that would actually look like, and it wasn't good. It wasn't pretty.
Uh-huh. I can see a situation like Seamus Heaney's translation of Beowulf with the Old English on one side and the translation on the other side, but that gets
Yeah,
into all sorts of, you have to make sure that it's
exactly the
always going to
same.
be physically laid out the same, and it doesn't work on ebooks, and yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. 'Cause there were definitely some processes that Z would evaluate and be like, "Well, that's dumb. I'm not doing that," and it would be a sentence long, and then the next one would go a page, and like, well, that is just not going to look nice, is it?
Mm-hmm.
Sorry, Scorn. You have to think one thing at a time, like a human.
Yeah. Sad that
Tragic.
Scorn has to exist in meat space just like the rest of us.
Yeah, compressing beautiful Scorn down to a single page at a time.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I had a lot of fun building this. I did an interview with Clark's World recently where I talked about my world building technique, and
Mm-hmm.
it is the Wallace and Gromit cartoon where Gromit the dog is on the front of a toy train riding
Oh
and just
yeah.
putting out one piece of track at a time as the train goes. And that is how I do world building, which is very fun and just like, what do I need to know to get me through this scene and make the world feel lived in? And
Mm-hmm.
I've never written a mystery before, and I was throwing a lot of pieces of train track out that didn't connect to anything because I thought, well, this is a cool red herring. Oh, this is an interesting red herring. And I really had fun imagining the world behind those little bits and pieces. And then I got to the end, and a couple other people read the book, and they were like, "So was that the culprit that Scorn expected? Did that have to do with this thing that you mentioned, or that thing? Was that a twist, or were we supposed to know that was going to happen?" And it's not fun to get to the end of a whodunit and be like, "Wait, who actually, in point of
Uh-huh.
fact, done it?" um, so we had to pare back on those red herrings a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
It was like a fish market exploded in there. It was bad.
I that is such a mood. I've uh I've worked on a couple of thrillers over the years, and I I have learned that I do need to outline to a certain extent, although my outlines are usually uh the step one whatever, step two whatever, step three question mark question
Question
mark
mark?
question mark, step four profit. That's usually the shape of my outlines, where I have the beginning, the middle, uh, a bunch of question marks for the climax, and then end. Uh, and yeah, I do a lot of that, laying track right in front of myself, and
Mm-hmm.
maybe off on a parallel track style of writing.
Yeah,
So
I do find I usually know the whole plot more or less.
good for you.
It's just I do love my outlines, but then everything happens in white boxes uh,
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, and then uh, knowing what the story is about and how it all plays out, then I can see what the world needs to look like a little more, and I can go back and add some detours and some alternate routes on the train track and see,
Mm-hmm.
oh, what's going on just outside our view? What is this? Or what is even what does this room look like? What are these people wearing? What do they eat?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing. They're robots.
Yep. Room? What room? This is happening in a server.
We're in space.
Yeah. So, I'm very much looking forward to the answer to this question because I can tell that you love so much about this book. Is there, without giving too much away, is there any part that you're just so thrilled made it into the end copy?
Um, to quote the delightful Marie Kondo, I love mess. And the complicated relationships among Scorn and their divorced mothers, inventors, is so much mess. And
Mm-hmm.
I just enjoyed evoking that familial tension. And for me, that was really the best part. But also, all the relationships between all the main characters, Scorn and their mothers, sure, but also Scorn and their older brother Matt, who we did not get to meet in this excerpt, who is a weather station and an earlier and less well developed general intelligence, and as Z fondly calls him, an overgrown toaster. And he is just very dear. And I do love Matt, the weather station. And then we also don't quite get to meet in what I read Scorn and Alouette, who is a bar or osteria in Rome, and who Scorn and Alouette seem to know each other better than Scorn remembers from before the several days of memory were deleted or lost or gone. So that was
Mm-hmm.
also very fun to play with. Very different from the family dynamics. Like, why do you know that about me? Uh,
Mm-hmm.
what is this? Are we having fun?
Nice. Oh, that sounds absolutely lovely. I'm very excited for this book.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear that. I'm very excited for it to be a real live thing in the world.
Yeah.
I wish I could put the cover on the podcast too, because I love the cover.
I'll put the cover in the show notes.
Oh, that's okay. That's exciting. Everyone,
Yeah.
look at this pretty moon.
Listeners, if your podcatcher supports images, scroll down. If not, go to the website, check it out. It's a beautiful, beautiful cover. So, a couple of things before we get going. Uh, One, do you have anything else upcoming recently, or that just came out? Maybe a novella, maybe a magazine issue that you'd love to tell our listeners about.
Maybe those both sound like they ring a bell. I do, in fact, have another novella that came out at the beginning of July. My third novella is A Half Remembered World in the July August issue of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction. It is very much like Emergent Properties in that they are both novellas, and very
Mm-hmm.
different in that everything else. It's a secondary world fantasy about people living on the backs of giant crab gods, including
Nice.
the main character's crab god is perhaps sick, perhaps dying. Uh, so that is that is also out in the month of July, and then in August, August 15th, a new issue of Translunar Travelers Lounge, which is the magazine I co-edit with my pal Bennett North. We have a new issue dropping in the middle of the month, and it is a
Excellent.
lot of fun, and I'm so excited for everyone to get their hands on the stories in that.
Yeah. As I said on the last episode you were on, Translunar Travelers Lounge, one of my absolute favorite magazines out there today.
Oh, thank you so much. We are so happy to be able to work with the amazing authors that we get to work with and that people are having fun reading the stories.
Yeah, absolutely. Uh, Second, and I'm cognizant that as we are recording this, we are in the middle of a historic double strike in Hollywood. Is there anything that you have been enjoying recently in the broader media landscape that you'd really like people to know about?
I would, and I am so excited to be subscribing to Dropout,
Oh,
which is
yeah.
yes, which is a streaming service run by the some folks that associated with College Humor at one point, and they pay above SAG-AFTRA rates, I believe. And the CEO Sam Reich is supportive of the strike. The money that they would have spent on a Emmy nomination campaign for their game show Game Changer, which is delightful. It's a game show where every episode the players have to figure out the rules of the game.
Mm-hmm.
It is amazing and hilarious, and that money was used to support the Entertainment Community Fund, I believe, in place of a Emmy nomination attention campaign for Game Changer.
Yeah, which, I mean, they deserve an Emmy for that, but they are,
they're against some behemoths in that
yeah,
field. Jeopardy, Wheel of Fortune. It's hard to dislodge those household names. Maybe next year. Maybe next
maybe
year.
next year.
Yeah.
But,
So
yeah, Dropout is wonderful.
Game Changer, all kinds of live D&D live plays that you can go back and check out from previous years. The most recent Dungeons and Drag Queens, which I have not watched yet, but I am looking forward to. Good
I've
stuff.
caught part of the first episode with my spouse, and it was delightful. I will always plug Escape from the Bloodkeep. Uh, it is if you like Lord of the Rings, then and if you like Lord of the Rings, and if you like
You
Matt
ever played a
Mercer and
villain?
Erika
Yeah.
Ishii,
You ever played a villain-themed D&D campaign?
yeah,
This one's for you, baby.
it's good. It's real good.
It's hilarious. They are doing
Yeah.
good stuff over there, and they're doing it in ethical ways. And I think that everyone should give it at least a quick check out on the. There's like a 3-day trial period, I think. Take a look.
Yeah.
Take a look.
It is well worth your streaming dollars, listeners, if you have budget for additional streaming services, or if you want to change which streaming services you're subscribed to. A lot of really good content, a lot of just really fun stuff, and again, produced in a really thoughtful and ethical manner. I will point out that their producer is the son of economist Robert Reich, which I just found out about like 2 or 3 days ago, and I
Yes.
thought that made a lot of sense, and also would never have occurred to me to make that connection.
No, no. And they did get him to appear on an episode of their show, Breaking Don't Laugh News or Breaking News, which was a surprise to his son, who was in that episode, which is very, very well played.
Yeah, I mean, given what he pulls on Game Changers, like turning the tables on him
Oh,
even one time, well worth it.
100%, 100% turnabout is fair play.
Yeah. If listeners, if you're on a certain corner of TikTok, you've at least seen some clips of mostly of Brennan Lee Mulligan getting tortured on Game Changers, and
No, just
it is
let
good
Brennan
time.
name some birds. This makes sense in context, I promise.
Yeah. Yes. If I can find the clip, listeners, context will be provided in the show notes.
Oh, excellent.
Finally, Aimee, and this is a loaded ass question in July of the year of our Lord 2023. Where can our listeners find you elsewhere?
Um, I do have a website, amyogdenwrites.wordpress.com, and for the time being, I am pacing back and forth along the rickety deck of this ship we call Twitter, uh, at Aimee_Ogden. And I will, as long as we're keeping our heads above water, I'll probably still be bailing out water and hanging out there.
Yeah.
Treading water perhaps alongside the sinking ship. That's where we're at.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always exciting to be luckily we're recording this just a few weeks before release, but it's been an exciting year in terms of asking people where listeners can find them and seeing, okay, at release time, is this website actually around still?
You cannot find me. I will be hiding in a cave on a moor in the middle of nowhere. Please do not contact me.
Yes. Hanging out with my good friend Spiders Georg. You know what it is. Well, Aimee, thank you so much for coming back on the show. It's been such a delight.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure both times.
Of course. Listeners, stick around in 2 weeks' time when my guest will be Jessica Mary Best. Tales from the Trunk is mixed and produced in beautiful Oakland, California. Our theme music is Paper Wings by Lillian Boyd. You can support the show on Patreon at patreon.com/trunkcast. All patrons of the show now get a sticker and logo button, along with show outtakes and other content that can't be found anywhere else. You can find the show on Twitter, assuming it still exists, at Trunkcast, and I tweet at HBBisnieks. If you like the show, consider taking a moment to rate and review us on your preferred podcast platform. And remember, don't self-reject.